Hi there, everybody. Welcome to The Extra Mile. My name is Gene Gurkoff, and in this, our first episode, we'll be walking in Lower Manhattan with Scott Harrison. Scott was once a nightclub promoter here in New York City. He then founded Charity Water, which has helped to bring clean water to millions of people. Charity Water is also helping to set the standard for the way that all nonprofits and mission-driven businesses like Charity Miles approach our missions. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to our partners at Johnson & Johnson. They don't know I'm saying this, I'm going rogue here, but since this is our first podcast episode, I want to take the opportunity to thank them sincerely for all the support they've given us through the years. They are a mission-driven business, just like we are, striving to make the world a healthier place. So we are very grateful for the opportunity to work with them. And we're surely grateful to all of you for joining us. Please subscribe to this podcast and leave a review so that we can make it better. If you've got any questions for us, ask them in the reviews and we'll strive to answer them in future episodes. And of course, tell your friends about the podcast and about Charity Miles so that we can all make a bigger impact together. Now let's turn up the volume and turn on your Charity Miles, perhaps for Charity Water today, and come along for the walk or run with me and Scott. Every mile matters. All right, everybody. Welcome back to The Extra Mile. It is a gray, drizzly day here in New York City, and I'm walking through Lower Manhattan with Scott Harrison, the founder of Charity Water, and all-around awesome, inspiring person. Scott, through his work at Charity Water, is not only helping to bring clean water to people all over the world, but he's changing the game for the way that nonprofits approach their missions and accomplish their work, and also inspiring, through his example, people like me and all of you to tap into our well of purpose and lead more meaningful, impactful lives.
I like that. You like that in there?
I know. I like plays on words. Scott, thank you for taking the time to walk with me today. This is actually take 2. I started recording, and for some reason, the recorder conked out on me. It's part of the
rainy experience.
The rainy day, fun experience of a live walking through Manhattan podcast here. But Scott, thank you very much for taking the time. So welcome.
Great to be here.
So again, let's just describe for our listeners who are maybe around the country, around the world, what we're seeing as we walk. So hopefully they could be walking along with us.
We're actually looking at the Freedom Tower right now.
Oh, we are looking at the Freedom Tower.
We are looking at the tallest building in America, if you count the spire, and we're about to cross the West Side Highway onto the waterfront, the Hudson River front.
Amazing. I'll get some photos of this and put them in the show notes so that you can all kind of have a picture of what it is like where we're walking. And this is quite different than... Oh, we're taking a picture here. This is quite different than where you maybe just were walking for the last week.
Yeah, on Saturday, I just got back from Uganda. So, Saturday I was in Uganda. Sunday afternoon I got back, and I got to visit Charity Water's very first water project, a well built a little over 10 years ago. At the time, in a refugee camp called Bobi, northern Uganda, where 31,600 people were living when I first visited the camp. 10 years later, the war has ended. 30,000 people in a refugee camp are now down to about 500 people, but it was amazing seeing clean water flowing so many years later.
Still through the well.
Yeah, the well was banged up. I mean, that thing had, we reckon it had been pumped about 50 million times. Over the last decade. Yep, about 5 million pumps every single year. Yeah, so pretty incredible.
So maybe kind of take us to the first time that you walked through that village, that camp. What did it look like then, and what does it look like now? What's it like to walk through there then, and what's it like to walk through there now?
Well, I'd first come across the water crisis in Liberia. I had left a very selfish life as a New York City nightclub promoter, where I'd spent 10 years just getting drunk, and I'd rediscovered a very lost faith, a lost morality, wanted to turn my life around, and had sold all my possessions and gone to go live in post-war Liberia. So in Liberia, I saw people drinking dirty water. I saw them drinking from ponds and from rivers and from swamps, and couldn't believe that so many people on Earth, currently 663 million people, were living without this thing I took for granted my whole life. And I wanted to help. So I created Charity Water to try to, mobilize everyday people to care about the water crisis, to care about the suffering of others thousands of miles away, and build clean water projects and change the game for communities like Bobi in Uganda, where people were drinking from a brown swamp, watching their children die of diarrhea.
Wow. So I definitely want to kind of dive into that journey that you took in your personal journey. I think it's super relevant for me personally, and I think for a lot of our members. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the work that Charity Water does to help provide clean water to people all over the world.
Sure. Well, we're a solution agnostic organization, so there's no one size fits all solution to the water crisis. And sometimes we drill wells that are 1,000 feet deep. Sometimes we dig wells that are 60 feet deep. Sometimes we build rainwater harvesting systems, gravity-fed systems, filtration systems, a lot of different things to get clean water to communities in need. You know, our work is focused on the rural people, so people that are living not in the cities or the towns, but in these really far-flung areas. And in fact, 80% of the people living without clean water now are living in these rural areas.
How many people, how big is this problem? How many people are currently without clean water?
Yeah, it's a 663 million person problem. And over the last 10 years, Charity Water has been able to fund projects for 7 million people. So we've just broken through 1% of the global problem solved. But, 7 million out of 663 million could depress you, right?
It's nothing to shake a stick at, Scott. I mean, that's incredible. 7 million people.
It's it certainly, would make a huge difference for those people. But we're really motivated by our ambition to see an end to this problem. We don't think that anybody should be drinking nasty, disgusting water that risks their lives every day simply because of the conditions they were born into, especially when there are solutions. This is a completely solvable problem. Unlike some of the diseases that we're looking for cures in test tubes and in labs, we know how to bring clean water to everybody on Earth right now. There's not enough awareness about the issue. There's not enough money being allocated towards it, but it's not a mystery.
So how do we bring clean water to everyone on Earth now? What is that solution?
Well, we've made some progress. The UN has just come out with a global goal around water, trying to, at least aspirationally see an end to water poverty in 15 years from now. But not enough money is being given. Not enough money is being raised. Charity Water is going to help about 1 million people get clean water this year. But we could help 3 million. We could help 5 million if we could get more support. So that's really the mission for a lot of organizations like ours, is get more everyday people to care about this issue that really doesn't affect them. I mean, that's the thing, I wonder if anybody listening to this podcast has ever had to walk 8 hours with 40 pounds of dirty water on their back. I wonder if anyone has ever been sick with trachoma, with parasites, with bilharzia, with schistosomiasis because of bad water. But yet 663 million people are facing issues like that every day. So that's really our mission, is to use media, to use storytelling to inspire people to do something about it. With these big global issues, it's so easy just to succumb to apathy and say, how could I work in my day job? How could I ever contribute to a problem as great as this? And, Charity Water now, over the last 10 years, we've gotten 1 million everyday people to do something about it, to bring clean water to 23,000 villages, 7 million people.
That's amazing. So 1 million people taking action, helped 7 million people, almost 20,000 villages, did you say?
23,000.
23,000 villages. I think you're right. People listening to this podcast most likely have not had to deal with any of those issues.
They're using water every day, right? As you walk, as you run, as you bike.
As you shower or wash your clothes.
As you shower.
Brush your teeth.
The average American, if you just look at water use in this country divided by population, we're using 30 times more than somebody would use every single day, and we just take that for granted.
One of the things that I'll say on a personal level, when I use charity miles and I walk for Charity Water, which I do a lot actually, it makes me appreciate the clean water that I do have when, I'm able to just go to the tap, the faucet, turn it on and have, some of the cleanest drinking water in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's easy to take for granted. I mean, even the Charity Water staff, even myself, sometimes we don't think about it. Water's everywhere here. We're not in scarce supply. We're not in shortage in New York City. And, Yet, on Saturday, I'm in communities where people are drinking from swamps and they're asking for help. They're saying, please, could you help us bring clean water here?
So I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes because I've experienced it. You have a virtual reality kind of simulation of what life is like for a young girl living in Ethiopia, is it?
Yeah, that's right. A girl named Salam. So we shot a 8-minute virtual reality film that documents the week where Salam gets clean water for the first time. And you put on the headset and you're watching this 13-year-old girl drink from a swamp with the animals, because that's all the water that's available. And over the week, you see drilling rigs come in and local technicians and hydrologists come and find the clean groundwater a couple hundred feet beneath the village. And at the end of the week, you're watching a 13-year-old girl drink clean water for the first time in her life. And it's really inspiring. And people say, well, let's do this. Let's do more of this. Mm-hmm. Why should any 13-year-old girl be drinking dirty water if she doesn't need to be?
So what, other than kind of some maybe the, I guess not obvious, but first kind of level problems that come from drinking dirty water, like health or disease, things like that, how else does that problem affect this girl's life?
Well, really, one of the biggest challenges is just the time that's wasted fetching dirty water. Just in Africa alone, over 40 billion hours are wasted getting water that's not even helpful. So when you're able to restore 5 hours, 8 hours back into a woman's day, and by the way, this is a 7-day-a-week job, not a 5-day-a-week. I mean, right. You don't just take Saturdays and Sundays off and not go get water. And, we walk for fun. We walk for exercise. We walk for leisure. We walk for great causes on your platform. But, the people that we're serving, they're walking for necessity. They're walking with 40 pounds of dirty water on their back in the baking sun. One of the most tragic stories over the last 10 years of charity water that I came across was of another 13-year-old girl living in a village called Maida in Ethiopia. And she was walking 8 hours every single day with dirty water on her back. And one day, right before she reaches her house, she slips and she falls and she spills her water. And instead of going back to get more water, she takes a rope, she ties it around her neck, and she hangs herself from a tree in this village. And the elders find this frail 13-year-old girl's body swinging from a tree. And, it certainly puts walking in a different context. And I lived in this girl's village, and I met her mom, and I met the girl that walked with her that day, and I saw her grave and where she was buried, and I met the priest who gave her funeral. And it just really, it hits you on a visceral level. Like, this is not humane, and we have to go faster. We have to stop this. We have to do more about it.
Yeah, it's hitting me on a visceral level now as we walk. And speaking of which, we're walking on the Hudson River right now with an incredible view of the Hudson River. There's a jet skier in the water. There's the Statue of Liberty. There's the Freedom Tower.
Actually, looking at my apartment.
Looking at Scott's apartment. And, when you hear a story like that and you're walking in an environment like this, it really just seems really worlds away from our reality. And it is worlds away from our reality. And
it is.
And
maybe a couple thousand miles.
But more than the miles, it's a different existence.
Sure.
And I think, when you tell that, I've got even like a lump in my throat and a feeling in my chest of wanting to be able to do something. And
well, I'll tell you another story, a happier one. There was a woman in northern Uganda, actually, where I was last week, and clean water was brought into her village. And she'd been walking a long distance, and she told our team that before the clean water, before she had clean water, she said, I would have to make decisions every day because it was so little water. What would I do with today's water? Would I cook? Would I clean? Would I wash my husband's clothes? Would I let him wash his body? Would I keep my kids clean? Would I wash their school uniforms? She said, I never had enough water. And she said, I always put my family first as the woman of the house, and she didn't use the water for herself. So she said, now that there is clean water, now that Charity Water brought clean water in my village, she says, now I'm beautiful. And we're like, what do you mean, Helen? Of course, you're a beautiful Ugandan woman. She said, no, you don't understand. For the first time in my life, I can wash my face and my body and my clothes, and I feel beautiful because I'm clean. And, again, in the category of taking things for granted, I mean, to think that just providing clean water to a middle-aged woman would make her feel beautiful, would restore dignity to her. It's work that's worth doing.
And that's why you say water changes everything.
We do. I mean, we just believe it's one of the most transformative ways to improve people's lives on the planet. Water means health. Water means improved education. Water means time back in your day. Water means improved economies, as you're able to turn that time into work, into money, as you don't have to go spend all this money on medicine for these preventable diseases.
So, for the people listening, what are some of the ways that they can get more involved in hearing these stories and experiencing these stories? I think I can obviously go to charitywater.org.
They can walk on the platform. They can walk on Charity Miles. But one of the ways that we've seen a bunch of people engage with us. There are really two ways. The first is by donating their birthday. And we really stumbled into this idea, but we said, look, birthdays, they've really become about stuff. And we get ties, wallets, handbags, socks, gift cards. We don't really need more stuff. 663 million humans don't even have their most basic need met. What if we got people to donate their birthday on behalf of others? Mm-hmm. Birthdays to provide clean water. So the sticky idea was you'd ask for your age in dollars. So 32-year-olds would ask for $32 donations, and 7-year-olds would ask for $7 donations. And one of the unique things about Charity Water is 100% of all the money we raise, from the beginning of time to the end of time, 100% goes directly to people and funds these clean water projects. All of our overhead, all of the stuff, the office, the salaries, the flights, that's all covered by 100 wealthy donors, so that every penny we raise can go straight to the projects. So people donate their birthdays, and we've had these amazing stories. 89-year-olds donating their birthday and saying, I'd love other people to be able to reach the age of 89 and live healthy, prosperous lives with clean water. So that's an amazing thing. The average person, Gene, raises $1,000 from their birthday. Far more. There's probably people listening. They're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know that anybody would give for my birthday for Charity Water." People do, and it works. We had a really heartbreaking story, but an inspiring one as well, of a 9-year-old girl in Seattle who donated her 9th birthday. She was asking everybody just to donate $9, and she raised $220. And right after her birthday, she was killed in a car crash.
Oh my God.
It was a horrible 20-car pileup on an interstate. She was the only fatality. But people were so inspired by her birthday wish. A 9-year-old, right, should want, toys, should want a party, should want cake. They were so inspired by this little 9-year-old girl named Rachel Beckwith that over 30,000 strangers donated $1.3 million. And Rachel was able to help over 100,000 people in the end get access to clean water from
probably
her
inspire so many others.
Inspire so many. So that's a great way. People could go simply to charitywater.org/birthdays. Even if your birthday is 10 months from now, you can pledge in about 10 seconds. And a month before your birthday, we send you easy instructions on how that works. And then the second way is we have an amazing giving community called The Spring. And for $30 a month, we can give one person clean water. So we've got a bunch of people all around the world, some who are given $10 a month, some who are given $100 a month, some who are given $30 a month, knowing that 100% of all the donations are going in a tangible way to give people clean water. And that's just charitywater.org/thespring.
And one of the things that's amazing about what you do is that, like you said, 100% of all the money that people raise goes to the actual projects, because you have a separate kind of what you call the well.
It's called the well, yeah.
Of some higher net worth individuals who are helping to support the operation side of things.
Exactly right.
And so when if I dedicate my birthday, or if I run a marathon for Charity Water, or if I join The Spring, 100% of that money is going to be going.
We even pay back credit card fees.
Even pay the credit card fees. So what are some of the things, you talked about being kind of solution agnostic, what are some of the ways that you're using that money to provide clean water to people?
Yeah, so we drill a lot of wells, and that's one of the things that people are really surprised. But so many of these communities are living on top of the clean groundwater that could save their lives. So just last week was an area where You can bring in a well drilling unit, a big rig, compressors, trucks, and you drill about 40 or 50 stories underground. So imagine a skyscraper underground, and you tap into clean water, and it's this amazing thing. And you put on a hand pump, and you watch clean water transform communities. In Cambodia, it's very different. There's water everywhere, but it's dirty, a lot of dirty surface water. So we're working with these communities to build individual bio sand filters, small units that actually clean and purify that dirty surface water. So, it looks different in all the different countries that we work in. But as you said, the important thing is that 100% is going, and we prove every single one of these projects with photos and GPS on Google Earth and Google Maps. So people can actually see the projects as they're built. They can see their money turning into clean water.
That's one thing that I think is amazing about the work that you're doing, is not just the fact that you are providing clean water to people, but the way that in which you're doing it is really changing the game for the way that nonprofits are or should be approaching their mission. And the work that you're doing with data and accountability to really be able to show people the impact that they're having, I think is really groundbreaking in the field. And it's certainly one of the things that's helped set Charity Water aside and help, kind of catapult you to the top of the nonprofit stratosphere. So can you talk a little bit about how you're doing that?
Yeah. We really like connecting donors to the impact of their gifts. And we think, a lot of organizations will look at donors as a means to an end and say, I want Gene's money, but I don't really like Gene, and I don't feel like I owe him anything. And, what does Gene know about water anyway, right? Let's just figure out how to get his money and then get more of it. We actually feel like we have an amazing...
So I'm going to walk a little bit away from the West Side Highway where it's a little noisy. I don't want to be interrupting Scott and his...
That's our intent.
Yep.
We feel like we've got a real responsibility to you to show you the impact that you're making and to inspire you. So, we recently crowdsourced a drilling rig, and over 10,000 people gave enough money to put $1 million drilling rig, a new one, in operation in Ethiopia. And we mounted a GPS unit to the drilling rig. We gave the drilling rig a Twitter account so people could follow it in real time as it transforms communities and lives every single day.
Is it still up?
Still up. It's called Yellow Thunder.
Yellow Thunder.
Yellow Thunder. I think it's twitter.com/CW Yellow Thunder.
All right.
Recently, we've been working with, thanks to a generous grant from Google, a $5 million grant, we've been working to develop remote sensors where we're installing them on our water points. And we're actually now monitoring about 3 billion liters of clean water. So we now know not only that our projects are working around the world, but how much clean water is flowing. Just trying to increase the transparency. Yeah. Trying to increase the transparency of the sector.
Which is amazing, because if you donate to Charity Water, if you support Charity Water, if you... Which way do you want to go?
I think it's going to get loud.
Okay.
By
the West Side Highway?
Let's do a quick loop and we'll get the next light here.
All right, cool. So we're walking in New York, just trying to keep it a little less noisy from the West Side Highway. You hear some of the motorcycles? This is an outdoor podcast, everybody, so hopefully you can hear some of that noise and are enjoying the sound scenery wherever you're walking. But actually, so one thing I did want to touch on or kind of dive into now as we're heading back, I want to make sure that we leave enough time to go into this, is your journey and how you, now that you're talking so deeply about so many of these things, but you didn't always know all this stuff.
No, I totally didn't. And, as I said, I was a selfish, sycophantic nightclub promoter who knew models and bottles. I knew more about vintages of champagne than, or various brands of, vodka than certainly about clean water. But you learn, and I've been to Ethiopia 29 different times. I've spent a lot of time out there in the field with our partners, talking to communities. Been in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of communities now that have needed clean water, that have gotten clean water. So, really was fortunate that I had the ability to change my life and quit the vices and never touch some of the nasty drugs I'd done again, or never smoke again, never gamble again. So many of these vices, I was able to really ditch 12 years ago and set my life in a new path.
So let's rewind 12 years. You were a club promoter here in New York City. What was the journey like that led you to that that change that you made?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long story. I was born in Philadelphia. My mom got really sick when I was 4 years old. There was a carbon monoxide gas leak in our house, and she almost died. And she didn't die, but was very, very sick my whole life. And I grew up as an only child, helping to take care of her. Very Christian family. Went to church every Sunday, and played in the band and played by all the rules. And then at 18, just started acting out and rebelled and went the other way and tried all of the world's vices: the smoking, the drinking, the gambling, the pornography, the strip clubs, just all the dark stuff. And at 28, just realized, wow, I've lost my way. There's that parable of the prodigal son where he's stuck with the pigs in the muck and eating disgusting pig food. And that's kind of how I felt on the inside. Even though my life looked great on the outside, I drove a BMW, my girlfriend was on the cover of fashion magazines, and everything looked great. But I had just torn myself apart, betrayed the spirituality that I'd grown up with, betrayed the morality that I'd grown up with. So I came back to faith, and a Christian faith in maybe a different way as an adult. I became really interested in service, and I'd seen some hypocrisy growing up and said, why don't I go and try and serve the poor? Why don't I see if I can pour my life out in the service of others and make a difference and make up for lost time? And that led me to Liberia, West Africa, and it led me to the clean water, or to the water crisis, and then just the realization that clean water was an amazing thing to do, to wake up every day and figure out how to get more and more people clean water to thrive and to be prosperous. And I never really looked back and managed to get married, and I've got 2 kids now and a really beautiful family, and feel very lucky to be able to do this every single day.
So were there things along that journey or your life as a club promoter that kind of led you to that realization, to that crisis of conscience, or was it all of a sudden like a lightning bolt hit you and you realized?
That's a great question. I think it was both. I mean, there was a steep decline. The more you do, of some of this stuff. And yeah, there was this moment in Punta del Este in South America, in Uruguay, when it's like the music stopped. I just realized there'd never be enough. There'd never be enough girls. There'd never be enough money. There'd never be enough parties. Somebody would always have a nicer car and a better apartment. And I was in this endless pursuit of selfishness, of pleasuring only myself, and there would be no end in it. It would lead me to a very dark place. I might die before the age of 40. So it was both. It was just the slow decline, and also that moment that, wow, something's got to change.
And so when you had that moment, what were some of the steps that you took to find your purpose and to tap into your purpose? Because you said you were in South America, and it was a little bit...
It took me a few months, and I came back and really kind of got the idea to volunteer. And what would the opposite of my life look like? It would look like a life of service. And I'd pissed away 10 years and thought, what if I gave one of them back, at least one of them back, in service to others, and see where that led me. So I began to apply to the famous humanitarian organizations of the world, and nobody would take me.
You didn't have the resume?
Yeah, I didn't have the resume. They didn't know what to do with a nightclub promoter. I mean, how in any way would I be useful? How would I be useful to them? These were serious people doing serious work. And finally, this one organization headed to Liberia said, look, dude, if you're willing to pay us $500 a month, you can volunteer. And you're willing to go to the
business model.
Yeah, and that's actually the business model for the org. Over 350 volunteers pay, which helps the organization do its work. So I went. I said, where are you guys going? They said, we're going to Liberia. Had never heard of the country before, but that was really where I got my start, and saw the need, saw that I could do something about it with my skills and with some of the people that I knew, and could get them involved, and turned I guess the entrepreneurship from nightclubs and bottles to clean water for others.
So that's something that I can relate to personally, not necessarily the nightclubs and bottles and beautiful, gorgeous models in my life, but I was on a path to have a certain career, which in many ways was rather selfish. Trying to make money for me and my family, and ultimately be able to give some back philanthropically. But I was going to work every day for me.
Yeah.
And I came
a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And I came to a realization that I wanted to do something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And which is what led me to Charity Miles. But I think that might be unrealistic for a lot of people to think that they're just going to quit their jobs and go to Liberia for
totally true
for a month. So what are some things that people can do within their lives that can just bring a little bit more purpose to the way that they walk through the day?
Sure, I think people can find a cause, find an issue, go deep with it. So many people know nothing about the different causes that they, even claim to support. Find something that's just not okay on your watch. Maybe it's water, maybe it's hunger, maybe it's a justice issue. Maybe it's a shelter issue. Maybe it's around refugees. Find something that is just not okay, and spend a part of your time and your talent and your money trying to alleviate the suffering of others, and inform yourself on that issue. It could be donating a birthday, it could be giving money every single month, but in addition to that, actually becoming informed and learning more about this issue so you can involve other people and you can talk about it and you can become an ambassador.
Are there certain things that you do, obviously with Charity Water, but maybe with other causes that aren't your day job, to educate yourself and to get involved and get educated on those issues?
Yeah, for sure. My wife and I probably give to 15 or 25, somewhere between 15 and 25 different nonprofits every single year. We're engaged in our church community. We're engaged in a mentorship role with some of these other younger nonprofits, and I try to help whenever I can. Sometimes there are more requests coming in.
Yes. You're giving with your time.
Sure. I try to give about 5% of my time, in service of others and in mentorship. But yeah, I mean, that's a real joy, right? In giving is real freedom. It's in the serving of ourselves that people actually find themselves in bondage. They find themselves kind of enslaved to selfishness. So
in giving, there's freedom.
There really is. The more you give, the freer you are. And I think it's three things. It's give your time, give of your talent somehow, and give your money.
All right. I think full stop on that one. That sounds, in giving there's freedom.
Awesome.
I think that's you should trademark that.
And now we're almost full circle.
So we're full circle. We're coming back to the Charity Water office. And again, we're super grateful for your time and insight and sharing this with us, and for all the amazing work that you're doing with Charity Water. Again, not just for the water issue, but for really leading the charge on how all nonprofits are approaching their mission. And as we kind of round it up here, is there any last words that you'd like to leave our members with?
We just made a 10th anniversary film that we're really proud of that kind of recaps the first decade of Charity Water, and it also talks about the spring, this giving community. So people want to check that out and share it, which would really help us because so many people don't know about us. It's just charitywater.org/thespringfilm.
We'll put that in the show notes. Scott, thank you again, and thanks to all of you. Hope you all had a good walk with us, doing our Charity Miles for Charity Water, and Scott Harrison. Every mile matters. Thanks a lot. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, dude. This is great. Look, I got like 8,000...
Hi, everyone. It's Gene again. Thanks for tuning in and walking or running with me and Scott. We hope that you're as inspired by him as we are. If so, subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. We appreciate your encouragement and feedback. If you've got any questions for us, ask them in the reviews, and we'll strive to answer them in future episodes. Tell your friends about the podcast and about Charity Miles so we can all make a bigger impact together. And of course, check out our next episode where I walk through the finish line of the Boston Marathon with an Ironman legend and the founder of the Challenged Athletes Foundation, Bob Babbitt. Thanks again, everyone. Every mile matters.